There are two taboo workplace topics. The one, religion and politics. So, give us your thoughts on religion and politics.
Raise a parliamentary inquiry initially with reference to the fact that...
Good Sunday morning, and thank you for joining us on Religion and Politics. Here we discuss and welcome your feedback on the two subjects that are too taboo to speak about in the workplace and general conversation for fear of alienation, but not on this show. Today in Religion and Politics, our religious topic is, why are there higher rates of divorce among religious persons that exceeds the divorce rates of non-religious people? And later in our politics section of the show, our subject is, what is your stance on abortion? But up front, did you know that approximately 80% of the divorces filed in America originate from couples who claim to believe in one of the three major religions? I'm referring to the monotheist tradition of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All three of these religions were born in the Middle East and are all inextricably linked to one another. Christianity was born out of Jewish tradition, and Islam developed from both Christianity and Judaism. So if 80% of the divorces originate from these faiths, guess where the others come from? If you say that the remaining 20% for non-believers or those who claim themselves to be atheists, you would be right. Now, why is this important, you might ask? It is important because one of the tenets of any of the faiths, with the exemption of Buddhism, is a strong marriage bond which precedes a strong family bond. Now, in a recent article with Pew Research Center and Jay Betts, we see some alarming statistics on a religion and divorce phenomenon. I will start with the facts that the article and then close this segment out with my opinion on why divorce rates are so high based upon the years I spent counseling married couples and religious couples as well. We start first with the Christianity rates of divorce. In this particular faith, it seemed the more you had a regimented belief, the less you would get divorced, and the less faith would look at divorce positively. One of the largest religions affiliates in the U.S. is the Christian religion. However, under the general header are several denominations, Catholicism being the first. Now, according to research done by the Pew Research Center, Catholics had one of the lowest incidences of divorce, with 19% having been divorced out of 4,752 interviewed. Next up, we had the Protestant faith. Now, the Pew Research Center found Protestant individuals, anyone who identified themselves as non-Catholic but Christian, had a divorce rate approximately 51% out of a sampling of 4,752 individuals. However, these were broken down by evangelical Protestant, mainline Protestant, and historically black Protestant. The highest number of divorces among this group were the evangelical Protestants at 28%. The historically black Protestants had a divorce rate of only 9%, according to the study. The next category in Christianity is Mormon. Mormons had a divorce rate of about 1%. Many studies attribute the low divorce rate among this group to be the strong emphasis on families and a powerful religious affiliation. Now, we move now to Jehovah's Witness. According to the Pew Research study, in a sampling of 244 Jehovah's Witnesses, 9% of them were divorced. However, this number was slightly smaller among this 2016 study, showing 6% of Jehovah's Witnesses as being divorced. Next, Orthodox Christians. The Orthodox Christian divorce rate was less than 1% for all religions, including Orthodox Church in America. However, another study done by the Pew Research Center with a sampling of size of 182 noted that there were 9% divorce rates for this group. And lastly, in the Christian faith, born-again Christians. The last actual research done on this group was by the Bonner Group in 2008. It showed the divorce rate for those born-agains were 33%. We move now to the Muslim divorce rate, and that's a new one. The most comprehensive study on the divorce among Muslims was conducted in 1990 by Dr. Elias Bar-Yunus, a professor of sociology at the State University of New York. Now, according to Bar-Yunus' research, the divorce rate among American Muslims was slightly more than 31%. The top reason for divorce among Muslims cited by a later Sound Vision survey includes pressure and issues with in-laws, adultery, and harem sex, and incompatibility. However, in 2018, the Pew Research Center isolated and listed Muslims having an 8% separated or divorce rate out of a sampling of 234 persons. The last group in our divorce religion trio is the Jewish faith. The most recent available study on divorce statistics among Jewish faith states approximately 9% of those surveyed have been divorced or separated. A 2017 article in the Jerusalem Post reports the divorce rate among members of the Orthodox Jewish faith is indeed on the rise. The reason for these include changes in social values, the desire for instant gratification, and a disconnect from the world. Now, beyond the three major world faiths, we move to the minor faiths. First up, Hinduism divorce rates. Hindus had a divorce rate of less than 1% among 4,752 people of all religions. Now, of a sampling of just 198 Hindu, about 5% of those were divorced. The census in 2011 in India showed an overall divorce rate of 2 out of 1,000 persons. However, the rate of divorce for the faith in India is lower than it is in the U.S. Now, Buddhism divorce rates, that's different altogether. The Pew Research Center showed that 10% of the sample Buddhists in America were divorced. So it seems to affect a lot of more religious faiths in this country rather than the originating country. Now, based on the 2011 census data of India, about 4.8 in 1,000 Buddhists were divorced. This was much higher than both the Hindu and Muslim communities at this time in India. And what are the Sikhism divorce rates? Now, in India, the rate of divorce for Sikh women was 6.3 per 1,000 persons according to the 2011 census. It was noted that by the BBC News, however, that the divorce rate among Indian religion is climbing. This is a trend that is seen due to concentration more on careers and cultural clashes. And then there is the Wicca/pagan divorce rates. Now, finding divorce rates among New Age religions like Wiccan, pagan religions can be hard. It was listed by the Pew Research that in these religions, the divorce rate was less than 1% of their sampling. However, this information can be skewed given the number of Wiccan pagan participants. But what about the flip side of religion? What about the non-believers? Let's take a look at atheist divorce rates. Atheists have seen and been some of the slowest and lowest divorce rates listed at 2%. And now moving beyond statistics to the facts on the ground. If you have ever heard me mention numerous times on this channel that I used to counsel couples for well over 2 decades, right? Among the makeup of those couples attending counseling in person by phone or on the radio reflected these numbers. But usually by the time they were brave enough to attend counseling, they had an awful long road to hoe in order to heal the damage they had caused to one another. So let me give you my little 2 cents worth on what I believe the divorce issue is in religious marriages. I believe it is a 2-issue problem that unless resolved both ways, the relationship is doomed to failure from the start. The first issue is that religious couples have a superiority complex when it comes to their mate. And the second is that they don't have enough sex at home. Now let me address the first issue. You see, rarely does both spouses go full out religious at the same time. Either one is full-blown religious and the other is lukewarm to it. The spouse that is further down the road in their religious understandings will try to convert, baptize, and beatify their mate against their will. If that mate does not want to be browbeaten into acceptance, their particular God and their particular way, they will want to leave because they see them as sinful or dirty. Now, under these strong critics, even the condemning spouse would not make it into heaven if their God required their penance they seek from their mate. It would be too high. Now, that is the first problem. Forced conversion followed by a life enviable by the Pope in Rome. The second mistake couples make that drive them into religious altar of divorce is by not having enough sex. Religious couples who have this problem reflect the same, that you are so heavenly focused, you are no earthly good. This old saying. Now, when I used to counsel religious couples, I always had a spouse who asked me, how could they get their wife to have sex with them? Now, this is not to say that their wives were saintly without sex. This only means that they were not having sex with their husband. You see, there are 4 loves as exhibited just about all 3 of the major religions. Those being Eros, Philia, Storge, and Agape. Now, most religious couples try to remain so saintly. They stay at an agape level, but this is a sure sign of a relationship that is headed down the tubes. Let me explain. I'll explain to you why and you learn how to dance as a religious couple. Okay, like I was saying, you have to learn how to dance as a couple. There are 4 loves in all of those faiths. Like I said before, Eros, which is erotic love or sexual love. Then you move to Philia, which is a friendship love. And then when you have a child together, that's Storge, S-T-O-R-G-E, or the love that you have for your child and the child has for the family. And then Agape, the last one, which is that religious level where God loves man and man is supposed to convey that same love unto each other. You can forgive at that level. But see, a lot of religious couples are so stuck in agape love at the top that they don't have sex at the bottom. But for generations, they thought only women had emotions. But both genders have emotions. So what happens is, when your relationship is stuck and you start arguing with each other, it means that you're stuck in one direction. So if you're arguing at the religious level or the agape level, it means that you need to lower closer to the philia, the friendship communication, and then ultimately the sexual level, eros, which is at the bottom. So you fluctuate up and down. You find a religious couple that's breaking up or angry with each other, they're not having sex. You find a couple that's so sexual, they're not getting along, they have no religion. Because they're stuck in a sexual relationship at the bottom. But emotions, human emotions, are nothing more than a fluctuation up and down the scale. Those 4 religions. Those 4 different loves within the religion. So if you're having too much sex, it means you need communication. You have too much communication, it means you need to move towards the higher one, maybe agape or down to sex. You cannot stay on one level. It will contaminate the relationship. It will smother the relationship. It will kill the relationship. So one gender does not have emotions. Women alone do not have emotions. Men do as well. Now, like I said, both end up breaking down because they're stuck on one level. So when the guys came to me, they were always asking why their wife wasn't have sex and how I can get them to have sex with their wife. See, I can't force a woman to have sex with a husband. But I do know that in those cases where they were too heavenly focused, they were no earthly good, is that they were too agape. They were too much into the church. And there's sex throughout the Bible. I don't know how you can take religion in the Bible and take the sex out. Or whether you're talking about the Quran. You know? And in Judaism, the same way. Some people just forget that those faiths had plenty of sex in them. There were plenty of problems with adultery in those books. There were plenty of problems with lusting in those books. In the modern day, human species decides that they're going to be saintly. We're not going to have any problems. You shouldn't look at that person. We're not going to have an affair problem, which is actually adultery. You're not going to have those problems. They're never going to exist. That is in itself a fantasy land. So just like in those books, they had real problems. Your relationship's going to have real issues. You're going to resolve those real issues, or we wouldn't be humans. We would be gods. So the problem in those 4 faiths, the higher divorce rate, is because A, they try to convert their spouse into being God. The day that they found religion, they said, you need to find it or I am out of here. And from that day forward, you need to do this by the Bible, you need to do this by the Quran, you need to do this by the Torah, or otherwise you're not religious. Not true. Because you can find somebody who's more religious than you and they'll point that finger at you. You could actually find your own creator and he'll be able to point the finger at you. What does that say? Judge not, lest you be judged. For I tell you, the same measure that you measure to somebody else shall be measured back upon you. Okay? So, we'll be back in a minute with our second portion of this show. You don't want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for watching. Moving to our political portion of the debate, we come to our topic. What is your stance on abortion? In a recent poll by the online webpage entitled I Stand With, A poll question was raised as to how people in America stood with abortion. So far, 24.6 thousand respondents have answered the survey, some positively and some negatively. One comment from a person who takes a new modern philosophy in that men should have rights in the decision to keep or abort their children, as well as the mother. They write, and I quote, "If the father of the unborn child is willing and capable of caring for the child and wants to assume legal custody of the child and is a fit parent, I feel he should have an equal say in the decision. There should be rights for fathers who are able and willing. I think this may encourage people to be more thoughtful about intimacy. I believe men should have a say in the decision of the termination of their unborn child. I also believe in required counseling before and after abortion, as it often leads to eventual traumatic disorders and depression." End quote. To this person's comment, another gave an equal response in the opposite direction. Their reply was, and I quote, "There is no evidence showing that the woman has her mental wellness affected from an abortion. Who is going to pay for all of that? The main reason why a woman gets an abortion is because she is financially unstable and cannot afford to care for her child. Sure, it would be nice for a man to have the chance, but the amount of stigma around pregnancy. An abortion is for a woman, not a man. A woman's body is more affected by the outcome. And if the man wanted the child, then most likely she would not be having an abortion. Plus, how are you supposed to enforce that? Is the clinic supposed to do a house check to see if everything is okay? Because then you are going down the rabbit hole of how people that are not white are disproportionately affected by home checks. Now, this is their opinion, not mine. It goes on to say, it is better to not have the regulation, excuse me, on who can get an abortion, because then you will have people that need this procedure but are rejected due to the laws. End quote. Now, there were also several comments in the pro-life direction. One respondent wrote, and I quote, "End all programs. No abortive procedures, period. Lock up all doctors, nurses, staff of any facility that participated in any abortive acts. I want stiff penalties for medical staff and go after any woman who had an abortion and grandfathering it. For each additional abortion, 15 years to life. It is premeditated murder, not only for the woman, also the man that impregnated her." End quote. And another wrote, and I quote, "I agree that a woman gets to choose what happens to her body, but only if that is her body. She doesn't have the right to kill a baby because the baby is its own separate body, and the woman can't choose for it." End quote. But I say, no matter which side of the abortion issue aisle you stand on, studies show your position can shift with age, income, political affiliation, and time. In short, it would be easier for someone to get a young person to side with abortion than a person that is a grandparent stage of life. I typically find that people on both sides of the coin are usually armed with passion more than they are with facts. I find this out when I ask them how many abortions have taken place in the United States since the Supreme Court ratified Roe v. Wade decision. And even more importantly, what are the global numbers for abortion? For this information, all one has to do is go to the abortion clock, and the abortion clock keeps an accurate count of the numbers of abortions performed in the United States as well as worldwide. This information is kept accurately because a part of Roe v. Wade being approved was that the federal government had to be able to track the number of abortions by race, by age, by incest or rape, and by choice. Another part of landmark abortion ruling was that it needed to be seen as an elective surgery, something similar to removing a mole or going to the dermatologist in order to make it legal. Now, in this fashion, it would be relegated outside of hospitals to a small clinic. Doctors who helped to create life did not want to associate with the practice of taking life. Also, by moving it away from the mainstream hospital, the federal government would not be as seen as assisting a form of forced abortion or sterilization scheme of subset of culture. And now to the numbers. I'm going to go to the chart and show you the abortion clock. And we're going to go over these particular numbers. Let's go there now. And now to the numbers. You'll be able to see here on the screen behind me that I have captured a page from the abortion clock online. Now, the abortion clock has the numbers that are live, so if you go to that page, you'll see that. But before you go off rushing there, let me explain this information. This image was captured when I visited the page on Friday, March the 19th of this year. I visited the page for about a half an hour, and the numbers dramatically moved over that time. By my count, on that Friday, there were an average of 13 to 20 abortions U.S.-wide for every minute. During the time that I stayed on that page, there were 3,200 abortions performed worldwide. Let me point out a few boxes here for clarity. Now, I would imagine whatever side you fall on that issue that people don't know these numbers. In putting together these numbers for the show, for the men's channel, we try to present you the facts to let you decide. That being said, this show does not choose to side with one opinion over the next. And my general opinion about the matter will not be reflected here. Otherwise, this would not be an opinion show. It would be my opinion show. Let's go to the numbers. Now, if you go to the abortion clock online, you don't need to type in .org or www. Just type in the abortion clock or the abortion clock online. You'll come up with this particular screen here. They keep the numbers for the United States as well as the entire globe. And the clock is live, it's active, so it's counting numbers as you go along. And so you'll be astounded. I used to ask people years ago, how many abortions do you think that have taken place in this country since Roe v. Wade? And they would say something like, probably about 90,000 or something. And I'd say, no, it's much higher than that. You would be shocked. So these are the actual numbers. And after you finish watching this show, I challenge you to go to the abortion clock online and find out for yourself. So in the United States, on that day when I looked at it for half an hour, the amount of abortions that occurred up to that point in the morning were 1,020. That's that top number right there, 1,020. Okay, the second line says the U.S. since 1973, since Roe v. Wade. And that number, listen up. Not what the person said, 92,000, something like that. The total number since 1973, 62,690,185.2. That's the number. 62 million people are not here anymore. So it depends on what side you stand on that, whether you can justify that to yourself. Let's go to the next one. The third box down is the number that Planned Parenthood, you've heard about Planned Parenthood and the controversy over them, how many abortions that they performed within the Planned Parenthood clinics. And that number since 1970 has been 9,097,998.2. The fourth box down, by Planned Parenthood just this year, because a lot of clinics perform them, but just Planned Parenthood alone has performed 80,421.2 abortions. We go on to the middle now. This is the United States amount of abortions just for this year, which is 187,281.2 abortions this year. Now the next block down the middle is U.S. this year after 16 weeks of gestation. Because you have first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester. So they try to abort the child within the first trimester. This one's in the second trimester, so after 16 weeks gestation. And that number, which was normally called late-term abortions, is 8,989.5. So now we go to what Roe v. Wade was actually approved for, that women should be able to have an abortion in case of incest or rape. Okay? So that's the third block down the middle. This is the total number in the U.S. this year due to rape and or incest. And that number is 1,816. So far up to date, 1,816 women or children, or girls, have had abortions due to incest or rape. So, okay, so it's less than 2,000, but the total number that's been aborted this year so far, only up to March, 187,281. You can take that 2,000 out of that 187,000, it still would be pennies. So they sold it on one thing and then they did something different. Now, that last box you see in the middle, the fourth one down, if you're in a minority group, that group, it says these are black babies since 1973 in the U.S. that have been aborted. That number is 18,807,055.5. Now, why is that number significant? That's one of the largest groups that have had abortions in this country. Even though they're a minority, they've had a majority of abortions. Now, in any of these numbers I give you, when I say 18 million, the average person could produce 2 to 3 people for themselves. So you're not actually missing 18 million people. You're missing that number whether you choose to multiply it times 2, whether you choose to multiply it times 3 or 5. Okay, that's a large community if that didn't happen. But that's your choice. Left or right side of the coin, the facts, so you can choose. Now let's go to the far right, because in this side we're talking global numbers. Abortions occur in just about every modern country, not just the United States. So worldwide since 1980, okay, worldwide since 1980, 1,608,687,302. Now this is the numbers since 1980. The actual numbers will put us north of 2 billion numbers. See, this just tracks since 1980 for global numbers. So we're missing over 2 billion people on the planet. Now there's always this story about we'll be overpopulated. And I never find that to be true. Because you can travel even in the United States from coast to coast, and in the middle of the country there's nobody out there. So to do something like this, you have to sell somebody something on overpopulation. Okay, worldwide this year, so this is just this year from January to March, to when I looked at that on that particular day, is 8,790,989 abortions performed. Number will go down to the third box on the far right. It says since I loaded the page. Or when you go on that particular page, it's going to give you the actual number of abortions that occurred while you are on that page. So if you stay on that page for an hour, you're going to see how many abortions occur within an hour. Like I told you, you're going to see all these numbers changing. They're going to constantly be changing. Now that one particular time, that was worldwide today in the last box. But like I said, whatever side of the issue you stand on, after looking at those numbers, it can change your position. When I was a young person, a lot of young people are Democrats. They get older, they change to Republicans. They say most people are Republicans when they either get married, move to the county, or that sort of thing. People stand on one side of the issue when they're young, another side of the issue when they're old. But this is not an automatic thing. You can do whatever you want to do, okay? So it's not for me to decide. But we've been glad having you guys with us today. Make sure you tune in next week. And remember to give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget, share with your friends, share with your enemies. Find out what they think about religion and politics. And we can't wait to see you here again next time.